Sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
The Bears are in town for Monday Night Football, and we are back for another edition of Bolts Brown Bag only at 10news.com, coming at you live streaming from the 10 News Cafe. I think we beat the rain scheduled a little bit later here in San Diego today. John Gennaro from the Mighty 1090 and boltsfromtheblue.com. I'm Ben Higgins. It's still a nice afternoon, even though it's supposed to get a little colder, a little wetter here in San Diego. Yeah, I don't have your microphone, but that's okay.
I don't either.
You're pretty enough that we don't need to hear you. We
yeah,
just look at you.
I'll stare directly at the camera, and everyone can just assume that I'm saying very smart things.
Say something smart, John. Get us started.
It would help if microphone usually makes you sound smarter, but I don't know. Do you think the Chargers are going to win tonight? Is that what we're talking about today?
I do think the Chargers are going to win tonight, and we will talk about that. We'll preview the game. This is also our mid-season review edition of Bolts Brown Bag. 8 games down, 8 to go, so we're breaking out the grades again. I only brought one, so
oh, no.
I don't know where the rest of them are.
Uh-oh.
We've got one at least. So.
Everyone might get an F. Here's my question to you. So yesterday, the Chargers didn't play, obviously, right? But the Raiders lost to the Steelers. The Broncos lost to
the Colts.
Those are the two teams, technically, that the Chargers are chasing in the division, right?
And the Chiefs, but yeah, go ahead.
Are they behind the Chiefs too? What's the Chiefs record?
They're like 3-5 or something.
Fair enough. Either way, the teams that played yesterday in the AFC West lost. So if the Chargers win today, technically they're only 2 games out of the final playoff spot.
That is true.
With 7 games left.
It sounds doable. Stop sounding like it's doable.
It just blows my mind because I don't know whether or not the Chargers are going to win this game tonight. I think it's kind of a coin flip right now, but if they win, then they're going into the bye week. There's a legitimate chance that they could pull this off again, which would just be so Chargers because they're very good at coming back at the end of the season once they start off terribly.
Well, at the very least, a win today makes the next 2 weeks not so miserable around Chargers Park.
Yeah,
Mike McCoy probably keeps his job, probably keeps the team's focus at least. Hey, we got the win. We come back. We get a week off. If we can beat the Chiefs, we're moving up the standings. We can maybe pull within a game of the wild card. Who knows? Because of all these undefeated teams, especially, with the 2 in the AFC and the Broncos with 1 loss, that the other playoff teams aren't going to have great records. That's just math for you. So it does give you that at least tiny bit of hope.
Well, and now we turn to the other side. And this can go into our, looking back at the first 8 weeks of the season for the Chargers, they've been terrible. They've been poorly coached. They've been unmotivated. The Chargers lose against the Bears tonight. Well, I'm not even going to go into whether or not they lose embarrassingly. If they lose against the Bears tonight, does Mike McCoy still have a job in 2 weeks?
It's the bye week. I mean, if the Chargers were going to make a change, obviously it would happen after a loss during the bye week.
After a 5th consecutive loss? Is that what it would be?
It would be a 5th consecutive loss. It would be a 7th loss in 8 games. I just don't think that the Chargers as an organization really have that in their sights, that they would fire a coach in the middle of the season. They've done it before. Kevin Gilbride was fired mid-season and replaced with June Jones on an interim basis. So there is some precedent for it. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I really do think that Mike McCoy is going to at least get to finish out the season just based on what I know of the organization and how I think they're at least viewing this season. While we may be viewing it as a complete train wreck and disaster,
right?
I think they're also viewing it as certainly not good, but they're also looking at the injuries and some of the other reasons that they think that the season's not going as well as they expected, and not necessarily putting all the blame right on the coaching staff.
Well, I'm gonna be the devil on your shoulder for a second. What would the benefit be to firing Mike McCoy on Monday night or Tuesday morning should the team lose this game, their 5th consecutive game? What benefit is there? We've listed some of them both here and in our podcast. Most notably, it probably helps you in negotiations with Eric Weddle at least a little bit in hopes of bringing him back.
If you even want to. Is it Mike McCoy that's the problem? Or if Tom Telesco doesn't want him back, then it doesn't really matter who the head coach is, right?
Right. Although Mike McCoy obviously did the team no favors in throwing Eric Weddle under the bus a little bit at minicamp when Weddle was sort of holding out and making his own statement. But it's a very interesting game, not because it's between a 2-6 team and a 2-5 team, but because it, as far as I'm concerned, can change the future of the Chargers organization.
Well, I think you've done a great job leading into the poll question, actually, that it's up right now at 10news.com/BoltsBrownBag, and that is, barring the miracle that we all hope for as Chargers fans, that you win your last 8, you go 10-6 or 9-7, you make the playoffs. Barring that miracle, would you rather see, A, the Chargers play well in the second half, rally, finish 8-8, and miss the playoffs again, or just continue to play poorly and lose a whole bunch of games and secure a top 5 draft pick for next season?
Are you asking me?
I am asking you right now. I am asking everyone out there to click and place your vote out there in Bolts Brown Bag viewing land. But right now I am asking you, John Gennaro, what you think.
I'm a believer in statistics, and statistics say that a 2-6 team making it to the playoffs is an incredible long shot. The other thing that I know is that the type of players that change your franchise, the players like Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, are usually high draft picks. The Chargers haven't really had one of those in a while. They've been stuck in the middle of the first round. I think as high as they got was 12. Is that where Melvin Gordon was picked? 12? And they had to trade up for that. So I say that there's a better chance of the Chargers not making the playoffs, and therefore I would be more pushing for, not necessarily them to lose, that sounds terrible, but pushing for them to get the highest draft pick available so that they can get a playmaker to build around next year. Because don't forget, Malcolm Floyd, last year of his career, he's retiring after this. Antonio Gates is in the last year of his contract. There's a chance he retires. Ladarius Green, last year of his contract. This team, not only are they very injured, but there's going to be a ton of turnover this offseason, and I would prefer at least part of that turnover be a incredible playmaking, either offensive or defensive player.
All right, got some tweets already in on the poll question. Danny says go for the wins. Jordan says tank with a lot of K's at the end.
A lot of K's.
J-Bone says win every time. Here's what I think, John. And by the way, my question really precludes the possibility of the playoffs. I'm just saying that's not a possibility. I'm just saying 8-8 and miss the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, there's still, as a fan, is a tangible benefit to winning games. I feel better when the Chargers win on Sunday, on Monday. And if I knew they were going to win 6 out of their last 8 and get that feeling, yes, it would cost them. They would probably drop down to, the 15th, 16th pick again. But there's no guarantee that if they get the 5th pick, they're going to use it wisely and select a star. Whereas there's no guarantee that if they have the 15th pick, they might not find a terrific player there. Now, you're right. It's more likely that they get a better player.
And it's all percentages.
It's all percentages, but I know that I will have the actual tangible benefit of enjoying 6 more Chargers wins and not feeling absolutely miserable on Sunday night as a Chargers fan like I've done 6 out of the 8 weeks so far this season. So I'm taking the wins. I'll just take 8-8 and know that, hey, at least they rallied and they showed some character and finished the season strong.
I would love to see it because on Sundays and Mondays when the Chargers lose, it typically puts me in a bad mood. And I'm not going to say it ruins my week, but it dampers my week a little bit. This show is a lot more fun to do after a win. We talk about all the great things they did. Here's another reason I don't want it to happen, though. What do you think is wrong with the Chargers? In 10 words or less, what do you think is wrong with the Chargers right now?
The Chargers do not have enough talent.
Exactly.
To be a contender.
Exactly.
Through a combination of factors.
But
roster construction, injuries. Okay, well, I stopped at 10,
okay.
And then this was the
addendum.
Yeah.
So if the Chargers go 8-8, they rally, they show heart, they show character, they go 8-8, which probably includes beating the Raiders, who are pretty good, and probably a playoff team right now, beating the Chiefs, who have looked good the last few weeks, probably includes beating the Broncos at least once. At that point, it becomes very, very easy for Mike McCoy and Tom Telesco to say, we were a couple of injuries away from the playoffs. We did everything right. The roster's constructed the right way. The coaching was right. The only reason we're on the outside looking in is luck. I don't want to give them the ability to blame luck for the Chargers missing the playoffs this year. I want them to have to look in the mirror and say, what did we do wrong?
All right, speaking of injuries, when we gathered last week, we were certainly fearful for Keenan Allen, but we did not know that he would be lost for the season with a lacerated kidney, which we found out later on that Well, we found out on Tuesday, but later on that
One of
Monday,
the
we knew.
worst sounding injuries I've heard.
Yeah, we knew it was serious. So that's been a big focus of the discussion around Chargers Park this week. And God bless Phillip Rivers. He can keep a positive spin on just about everything, and he did so talking about his top target, 67 catches for Keenan Allen, out for the rest of the season. Here's Phillip on Keenan.
Gosh, I mean, he's off to getting one of the best starts ever. And
I don't have it.
So I know he hates he can't be out there to finish that and to try to help us turn this around. But he, my thing was, when this all passes, it's not a knee or an ankle or something physically like that that's going to affect your football career. You'll be healed up and ready to go next year.
The good news is we have a plethora of talented playmakers, and we just have to spread the ball around, and we have a quarterback who knows how to do that. And we have to move some guys around a little bit, create some things for some guys. But again, we don't have to stretch too far because we got a lot of guys on this team that know how to make plays.
All right, two things from there. First of all, Phillip Rivers went to Keenan Allen's hospital room and basically said, hey, man, at least it's not a knee injury. At least it's not something that's going to hurt your athletic ability. You should be fine next year. Cheer up, man.
Silver lining and everything.
And then Frank Reich, I love using the word plethora. They have a plethora of other options besides Keenan Allen. I don't know that I'd agree that they have a plethora of options, but they do have Danny Woodhead.
They have Danny Woodhead. You have Malcolm Floyd, who's still there. You have Ladarius Green and Antonio Gates if they're healthy. You have Stevie Johnson, who came out this week and said that despite the fact he's playing, he's still not healthy. But there are playmakers out there, and as we've seen, Phillip Rivers doesn't need a lot of help to at least put up yards, put up points. What this game this week, this game against the Bears is going to come down to is the Chargers' defense, because they haven't been able to stop anybody lately. And if they can somehow keep the Bears from scoring 28, 29, 30 points like they've been giving up every week, they can hold Jay Cutler, Alshon Jeffrey, and that Bears offense without Matt Forte to 20 points or less. I think Phillip Rivers can do the rest.
Well, that's why I think they actually have a good chance tonight. The one player who's really been solid defensively for the Chargers is Jason Verrett. So if he can limit Alshon Jeffrey, who's been good but also been hampered by injuries throughout the season, and without Matt Forte, if Matt Forte was running hard, I would say, uh-oh, Chargers are in trouble. But without him, I can't see the Bears just putting up 30 points.
Although the Bears do have Jeremy Langford is going to be their starting running back today. I've asked around. I've done a little bit of research because he's going to start against the Chargers tonight. And this is the guy. The coaches love him. The front office loves him. The other players love him so much that the Bears have decided they're not re-signing Matt Forte. At the end of Matt Forte's contract, he can leave because we have Jeremy Langford. So it's a little bit of an early time for him to be taking the reins and starting, but they're confident that this guy is a star in this league so much that they can get rid of one of the top 5 or 6 running backs in the league a year or two from now. It's going to be really interesting to see what he's able to do against a Chargers defense that, first of all, isn't very good. And second of all, you have Brandon Flowers, who Michael Gelkin tweeted out is dealing with a knee injury he's had since 2013 with Kansas City. Eric Weddle is, I think, questionable or doubtful. Denzel Perriman is out. There's a lot of injuries on this defense. It's not very good to begin with. So what this comes down to is, can Jay Cutler avoid throwing interceptions?
Okay, hopefully you kept the Bolts Brown Bag tab at least open while you were adding Jeremy Langford to your fantasy football team.
Absolutely do it. I got him at FanDuel this week.
So, come back to us. Okay, you got him on the team. You picked him up for next week off the waiver wire that was on there. Okay, good. Back to the show
Future
now
star.
because it is time to grade the Bolts. First half of the season.
Okay.
We did this at the quarter of the season. I actually did bring all the other grade
you
cards
trickster.
as well, not just the Fs. I know
Gotcha.
that. So they are all here, John, for your perusal. And let's start with the quarterback position, which has been Phillip Rivers, other than when I think they pulled him for a moment and Kellen Clemens got to play in the Vikings blowout.
It's a little bit more than a moment, but
I mean, Phillip Rivers is putting up record numbers, on record pace, yardage. He's having an absolutely phenomenal season. But what did I say a few weeks ago? You got to judge at least the quarterback partially by wins. So that's why I can't give him an A. Phillip Rivers, for me, is getting the B+ as quarterback grade for the Chargers in the first half. But you know what? It's a lot of it. Even though it should be an A, if he had won a couple more games, it would be a clear A.
it's fair. I get it. Where's the A? Because I'm going to give him an A. I'm giving him this nice, beautiful A because Phillip Rivers, not only has he been putting up the yards, putting up the stats, but he's also been putting up the points, getting into the end zone, sometimes without, his best players. Keenan Allen may have a lacerated kidney, but he's also missed the second half of the last 2 games, so it's not like he's been there all season long. Rivers has been great with whoever's out there, and in addition to that, he's thrown some interceptions. He threw 2 against the Lions in week 1. He threw 2 against the Raiders. But outside of that, he's not fumbling the ball, and he's really throwing interceptions at a lower rate than he typically does. So to play with less around him, be at an offensive line that who is starting at offensive line? I don't think anyone knows. And somehow he's avoiding the big mistakes that kill quarterbacks.
All right, let's move on to running backs. And for that grade, I give a D for Danny. He's a plus.
Okay.
Danny is definitely a plus, but the overall grade is just a D plus because when you factor in Melvin Gordon's disappointment so far this season, you can't really say the running backs have done a good job for the San Diego Chargers.
I'm bringing out the red.
Really, already, even with Danny Woodhead.
Even with Danny Woodhead, because part of how you grade a team is how you grade the coaching staff and what they do with the players that are on the roster. Danny Woodhead's been great, but where has he been? He hasn't been anywhere the last couple weeks. He hasn't been able to get on the field. When you look at Melvin Gordon, how often they've focused their entire offensive attack around Melvin Gordon when he has been far and away the worst rookie running back in the league, it's a bad running game. It's at no point can you say it's a good running game. Danny Woodhead, I might bump up the grade for the slot receivers, but for me, he doesn't do anything for the running backs.
All right, quick poll update. It started out, everyone agreed with you. Tank was winning 2-1 on the votes.
I see
Slowly
it's going
been
in the other
climbing
direction.
up. Tank's still winning. It was 60%, now 59% for Tank and 41% for Rally back to 500. So I swayed at least a few people with my emotional argument as a Charger fan.
And I said, if they win this game against the Bears, they're still kind of in
They
it.
are, oh yeah.
I understand going for it. I do. I mean,
100% would say, yeah, I want them to rally, make the playoffs, and then go on some incredible run to the Super Bowl.
At the end, and I want that too. But
The Chargers-Cowboys Super Bowl between two teams that are 2-6 right now and have lost a combined 10 in a row is going to be epic in Santa Clara in February, right?
it's so many storylines. You can't even believe them. I'm always looking at the big picture. How does this season help the Chargers 5 years from now? And for me, the only way this season helps 5 years from now is if they get a top 5 draft pick.
All right, when we did the grades last time, I didn't break out tight ends specifically, so I am doing so this time.
Sure.
And I'm giving them a B.
Sure.
Antonio Gates was hurt, but Ladarius Green did a pretty nice job when he wasn't there. And then when Gates was in, he had a big game. The tight ends haven't been the problem, at least, so B.
No, so I agree with everything you said, which is why I have a B.
John Phillips even scored a touchdown.
John Phillips is the reason for this plus right here. Because John Phillips has performed way above expectations. Catching passes, he's been a halfway decent blocker. Overall, the tight ends have been one of the best groups for the Chargers.
All right, wide receivers, obviously they're maybe different in the second half of the season moving forward.
What are you looking for?
But where's the minus?
I don't know.
Was it on the back?
Maybe we don't have a minus.
Did I lose it under
You're
here?
just going to have to say it.
I lost the minus. I had a minus, A minus.
Yeah,
for
there
the
you
wide
go.
receivers.
There you go.
Keenan Allen's been spectacular. Malcolm Floyd has done Malcolm Floyd things. Stevie Johnson was better before he got hurt, but
Right.
Certainly hasn't been bad. The wide receivers have contributed positively over the season.
You know, I am going to give them, if I find the minus, I'll let you know. I'm going to give them a B.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because I gave Phillip Rivers so much praise for playing with nothing. Keenan Allen has been great. Malcolm Floyd, like you said, has done Malcolm Floyd things. By no means do I look at Malcolm Floyd and say that's a very good number 1 wide receiver. He's just a guy. Dontrell Inman, just a guy. Stevie Johnson had a couple of good games up front, but he's basically disappeared since his injury. There's one guy who stands out as very good, and a bunch of other guys who just seem like they're getting the bump or the benefit from playing with Phillip Rivers.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right, offensive line, and I think we're going to differ pretty strongly here.
Ooh.
I'm giving the offensive line a B.
Okay.
And I am actually been pretty impressed, especially recently, with Phillip Rivers dropping back 50, 60 times a game and only getting sacked, once or twice, with makeshift guys in front of them, they've actually done a pretty good job. Mike McCoy's kind of stressed that the last couple of weeks. You don't notice it, but anytime a quarterback has to throw as much as Phillip Rivers has had to throw, if you don't have your offensive line at least performing at an adequate level, it usually turns into a disaster in the NFL. Sacks, fumbles, interceptions, turnovers, and the Chargers have been able to avoid that. Now, Phillip Rivers is a lot of it, but, I mean, Joe Barksdale has been a real nice pickup. You know, a guy late signing by Tom Telesco who's managed to stay healthy out there and perform pretty well. I think DJ Fluker, when he's healthy, has thrived at the guard position. Yes, the injuries have not been good. Chris Watt has not been good because of the injuries. Orlando Franklin hasn't been on the field enough. King Dunlap hasn't been on the field enough. But it could have been so much worse considering what they've had to go through. So I'm giving them a little extra bit for effort this season.
All right. Well, I'm between a couple of different things here. I can either go B for Barksdale, who's been great, or D for DJ Fluker, who's been great as a guard. I'm going to go with the D, and I'll tell you why. It's because outside of those two guys, everyone else has been a minus. Orlando Franklin has been a negative for the team. King Dunlap, while he's been good while he's out there, is again having injury problems. He's been a negative. Trevor Robinson's been a negative. Chris Watt's been a negative. Overall, this offensive line has not been good. There's just two bright spots for me, and those are the guys that bump it from an F to a D.
All right, let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball. It hasn't been good all around, but we'll start with the defensive line, and maybe I'm just feeling generous. I feel like they've been getting better as the season's been going along. They were definitely running on the D-minus level, but the last few weeks, I feel like they're getting better. They're getting more pressure. Inside, they're stopping the run a little bit better. So I don't know, C. Can I give them a C?
You can give them anything you want.
All right.
If you've ever heard about someone who just didn't eat, went on a hunger strike for like weeks on end, they can literally eat anything at the end of that hunger strike, and it's going to taste delicious. I think you're falling in love with a really bad defensive line because you got nothing else to go on. This defensive line gets an F. They're bad. Corey Liuget has been bad, and he's been the best of them. Kendall Reyes is terrible. Sean Lissamore is terrible.
Seen a little more out of Kendall Reyes the last couple of weeks.
A little bit here and there. He picks up garbage sacks.
You're probably right.
Ricardo Matthews has been bad. Literally, the best defensive lineman has been Ryan Carruthers, and he's barely plays, and he's a very one-dimensional player.
All right, you're probably right. I'm just a softie.
You are.
I'm that teacher you want to get, I guess.
You're that guy.
I don't want to have to meet with the parents later and talk about why the student's failing. I'm just passing them on to the next teacher and grade.
You know what?
It's someone else's problem.
It's been 2 weeks. You haven't eaten anything, and someone gave you a fresh bowl of gruel, and it tastes fantastic. I get it.
All right, linebackers, D+. A lot of injuries. Melvin Ingram has been very inconsistent, I would say. There's been some great plays. There's been some disastrous misreads and wrong positions that have led to really big plays. And I think the Chargers' big play problem is mostly a linebacking problem.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, you want this?
And no, I'm going to take these. I'm also going to go D+. This is almost entirely for Jerry Atauchu, who's been pretty good and pretty consistent, pretty healthy. Issues. Manti Te'o can't tackle. Donald Butler is terrible. And Melvin Ingram has revealed himself to be a very good third down pass rushing linebacker who should never be on the field on first or second down. He's only playing that position because they don't have anyone in front of them. But when he gets put in the position that he thrives in, he thrives. So at least they're doing something, which is why I won't give them an F.
All right, cornerbacks, this one's an easy for me.
Sure.
Jason Verrett, Brandon Flowers, average of the two.
Sure. I would do something like that, although here's your average of the two, and here's your Patrick Robinson, Stevie Williams, who those guys who've been called into action more than any nickel and dime corner should have been good.
Safeties, I don't know, D+. Where's the plus again? There it is. D+. I mean, the Eric Weddle injury really puts him behind the 8 ball. Jaleel Adai has made some boneheaded mistakes, penalties, absolutely.
Jimmy
Wilson has been really bad.
Awful.
So
Eric Weddle has been fine when he's been on the field. He hasn't been great. His effort level has been low, but it's enough that I can't give them an F. I
All
may
right.
have given them a minus if we had one.
We can, though, however, give an F to the special teams, and
Sure.
we will.
And we should.
We absolutely should. Separately, this is Josh Lambo. He's been a plus. Good job, Josh.
Mike Cyphers has been fine.
Rookie kicker. Good job. Everyone else, 1 punt return yard. Jacoby Jones, of course, was released earlier in the week.
Yeah.
He had -4 yards. So actually, you and I both have 4 more punt return yards than a guy who is considered one of the best punt returners in the league and signed for $1.7 million with the Chargers before the season. You and I have outgained him by 4 yards this season.
I always viewed myself as a Danny Woodhead, small little running back, but maybe I am a punt returner because, I'm doing better than a former Pro Bowl punt returner, kick returner. I'm going to give them a D, and it's for
special teams. D.
Yeah,
D.
it's for all the reasons you stated. That the
Right.
coverage units are god awful, but they made the bold decision to stick with Lambo instead of Novak, and I appreciate that, and I think it's paying off. They're making another bold decision, cutting Jacoby Jones, despite the fact they signed him to a pretty big contract. I appreciate that. So the the front office has not been the problem here. The problem has been the coaching on the coverage units, which has been probably worse than the league.
All right, finally, the coach of the team gets a grade from us. Hi,
Absolutely.
Mike. Yeah, we're not big fans.
No, and that's when they're playing against a team like the Bears, I almost get nervous because at this point, I just don't want to give the Spanos family or Tom Telesco any reason to think that Mike McCoy is a competent coach.
He's not the answer. Does he do everything poorly? No, of course not.
Just about.
I mean, you don't get to this point without at least hopefully doing a few things well. But is he the answer going forward for the Chargers? I really don't think so. And yes, he's dealt with some injuries this season, but I came up with a stat I tweeted out before the show today. I don't know if you saw this one. The Chargers are 2-6. There are only 2 teams in the NFL out of the other 31 teams that have a worse record than 2-6. There's the 1-7 Detroit Lions,
lost to the Chargers,
and the 2-7 Cleveland Browns.
Also lost to the Chargers.
Those are the Chargers' only 2 wins. They have only beat the 2 teams that have a worse record than them. So you can't make any other argument than saying the Chargers are the 30th best team in the NFL right now.
Absolutely.
Out of 32.
And if they beat the Bears,
with one of the best quarterbacks in the league too.
Yeah, a top 5, 6, at least 8 quarterback. Nothing else on the team has gone right. Nothing.
I mean, I've got to imagine there are other coaches out there. If you gave them Phillip Rivers and then basically a roster of 52 other completely replacement-level football players, would somehow manage to at least go 500.
Bill Belichick
roster,
is taking
right?
his team to the playoffs and winning playoff games.
There you go.
That's your difference right there. Because we've seen Tom Brady do that with absolutely nothing around him. This team is as bad as some of those Patriot teams, but can't find a way to get out of their own way. They make too many mistakes.
All right, let's get to our picks update because it was a bad week for me.
Bad week for everyone.
I lost both overtime games, Saints and Cowboys, so I'm still at 32. You only picked up 1 on me with your very easy Patriots 1 point.
I'm coming, but I'm coming slowly.
And then Chris Ello nailed 3 points this week in the Vikings against the spread. But none of us, the Raiders came close, Cowboys came close. None of us could hit the upset.
Here's my question to you as the person in charge of this whiteboard. It has been Ben, John, Chris laid out that way since week 1. Those have also been the rankings since week 1. If Chris passes me or if I find a way to pass you, do we then switch names?
Yeah,
is there a way
probably
for me to go?
will do that.
Is
yeah.
this like a golf leaderboard?
Yeah, I
and
can
I
do
can
that.
find a way to bump up to the top? Because I like that top position. It looks nice.
I can do that for you. But, yeah, I haven't had to change it since week 1. It's been very consistent right there.
Yes.
Okay, before we wrap up, of course, we got to do our 3 questions.
Let's do it.
Which is basically criticizing Ben and John about the Bengals.
Yeah, for some
segment.
reason.
So-
It just shows you the quality of fans they have, the Bengals.
I picked
they
the
can't
Bengals
even
this
win
week.
the right way.
Chris picked the Bengals. I picked the Bengals in my my web best bets. They covered a 13.5-point spread on Thursday night against the Cleveland Browns. I'm showing a little faith
By the way,
in the Cincinnati Bengals.
I think I saw something that of the undefeated teams, I think their head coaches are 3 of the 4 longest tenured coaches in the league. I think that's true. I think Mike McCarthy has Ron Rivera beat by a couple of years. But the Panthers, the Bengals, the Patriots, specifically the Bengals and the Patriots, 2 longest coaching tenures in the NFL, both undefeated.
So if the
right
Chargers had just stuck with Norv Turner, they'd be undefeated.
If they
right
just
now.
keep Mike McCoy for another 10 years, they'll be fine.
All right, Ferris, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, hit us up here.
Well, my first question, I hate doing this every week.
You don't
It's
have
been 2
to.
months.
You really don't have to.
It's been 2 months. They just won't lose.
You're just as surprised as we
Is
are.
it bothering you?
Don't deny it. You're as surprised as we are that the Bengals are 8-0.
You know
John,
what?
in 1989,
It's going to make this wild card loss. No, it's going to make their first playoff game loss where Andy Dalton throws 6 interceptions that much sweeter. I can't wait to do a broadcast after that game.
John, in 1989, a misguided man penned these misguided words. Quote, lacking much in the way of attitude, the show seems obsolete and irrelevant, unquote. That man was USA Today critic Matt Roush, writing about a show you may have heard of called Seinfeld, the greatest television show of all time. Matt, no one likes to be, or sorry,
How do I
John,
end up
no one
surrounded
likes
by
to
you
be-
two every week?
on the wrong side of history. But which of these emotions ran through your mind when the Chargers got bumped from Sunday Night Football for the 8-0 Bengals? Resentment, denial, pain, or anguish?
Relief.
Or all 4?
Relief. No one wants to watch this team. I wish they weren't playing on a national stage with no other alternate viewing options tonight. No one wants to watch this team. They're terrible. Are you trying to prove a point that I don't know the Chargers are terrible? I know the Chargers are a bad team.
Before we continue with the actual questions, Ferris, the Chargers just made a move. I just saw on Twitter from our colleague at the Mighty 1090, Annie Halbron, that Chris Watt has been placed on injured reserve.
And Craig Watts has been signed to his place.
Watts for Watts.
So we're replacing Watt with Watts.
How
Okay,
many
very good.
injured linemen now is that?
An infinite amount. It never ends. It's everlasting and ever ending.
Wow. So first question, why was Greg Hardy playing football last night?
That is a good question.
Why is Greg
I
Hardy
mean, the
playing
Cowboys
football?
are 2-6, and they're taking on this public relations nightmare at the same time. That's a tough one. That's tough. Those pictures that came out last week from Deadspin, I mean, I think we all knew that Greg Hardy was an abusive, bad guy before the pictures came out.
Sure.
Those were really bad, though.
Let me rephrase it. Who's to blame for Greg Hardy playing football last
Jerry
night?
Jones.
Jerry Jones?
Yeah.
Okay.
No one blamed the Eagles when they signed Michael Vick. Like, there are worse guys in the NFL than Greg Hardy, I assure you.
Well,
There are worse
Michael Vick also
pictures out
went
there.
to prison and at least,
Yeah.
paid the so-called debt to society for a while, which Greg Hardy has done none of, and
Greg
barely
Hardy
shown
missed a
any
season of
contrition
football.
at all.
He missed a season of football. Granted, he got paid for that season, but he missed a season of football. Don't tell me that's not at least a
Boo-hoo.
small attrition.
Boo-hoo, boo-hoo.
I'm just saying. I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying Greg Hardy is not the devil. There are worse things out there. The fact that no one sat there and said, "Why is Michael Vick playing football?" makes me really kind of look at people and say, "Why was it any different?" I saw pictures of what Vick did to dogs. I've seen Ray Rice punch a woman in the face, and yes, no one has signed Ray Rice, but they could. If he was talented, he would be on the NFL team right now.
Also, in addition to going to jail, I also think he genuinely showed some contrition. He has been, pretty model citizen in the NFL since he's come back. I mean, he's had no problems whatsoever. I have not seen that same contrition, remorse at all from Greg Hardy.
And Hardy,
one tweet?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
And
I'm working on being a better guy. Great.
Hardy also, I feel like since he came back, he's continued to do things like when he came out and said, I'm going to come out guns blazing.
Exactly. He's just
when he got in
pushing
the fight
buttons.
on
He's
the
still
sideline.
pushing buttons.
Yeah, it seems, and I actually disagree with you. I think what Hardy, sort of levels of bad, but what Hardy did is 1,000 times worse than what Vic
Right.
did.
Question
That's
number
just-
2.
That's just what I think.
All right. It's an interesting issue. It's
It
important.
is.
It is.
Which of these teams are frauds? Packers, Falcons, Broncos.
Packers are not a fraud. Falcons are a fraud, and Broncos a little fraudulent.
The only one on that list is Falcons for me.
They're definitely fraudulent.
Yeah, the Broncos are a great team. They'll get 12 wins, and the Packers will get 12 wins as well.
The Falcons' loss to the 49ers and Blaine Gabbert yesterday was abysmally hideous. It really tells me that the Falcons
How do you
are
explain
going
their
nowhere.
wins?
The Falcons?
They started out really hot.
The Falcons started great, but they were working with a brand new run blocking scheme. They changed their coaching staff completely. I think it took some time.
They
for
may have
people
caught some opponents off guard.
I think it took some time for everyone to get some tape on them and go, oh, now I see what they're doing. And people have also realized that Matt Ryan is not the quarterback that everyone thinks he is. If you watch that game against the Niners, they did one thing. They said, we're not letting Devonta Freeman beat us. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, these people have to beat us, and they couldn't.
All right, last question.
Okay. Was LaMarcus Joyner's hit on Teddy Bridgewater dirty?
You know, I thought about this one, and if you hadn't seen it, it was Teddy Bridgewater sliding. It was really late. It was definitely illegal. Is there a difference between an illegal hit and a dirty hit?
Yes.
I don't know that it was dirty. I think it was late and it was a mistake, but I don't know that he was intending to injure Teddy Bridgewater.
Well, first of all, he came out after the game and said, look, I grew up in the same town as Teddy. My parents are friends with his parents. I'm rooting for the guy. I want him in the game. And I believe him. I don't know if you guys believe him.
I did.
I believe him.
Yeah.
I think the only reason this is getting as much attention as it is, outside of the fact that Teddy Bridgewater was unconscious for a second, is because Greg Williams and Jeff Fisher are involved.
The Bounty Gate defensive coordinator from the Saints, who's now with the Rams, and Jeff Fisher, who was always known in the Titans to have some pretty dirty teams. They're the ones who pretty much ended Sean Merriman's career.
And he said that the players told him that, you know, there was a hit on him. Rodney Harrison said on NBC yesterday that he had heard of players getting injured and Jeff Fisher laughing at them while they're on the ground.
I had to laugh at Rodney Harrison calling out other people for
being
playing
dirty.
No.
Well, see, and that answers your question right there. Is there a difference between a dirty hit or an illegal hit? Yes, Rodney Harrison. He
Did anyone call you out for ending Trent Green's career, Rodney? You know,
yeah,
he complained about someone who took a cheap shot at him, and Trent Green probably could have complained about that time that
absolutely.
I ruined his life, and Kurt Warner took over his job.
Kurt Warner's
with
not
the
complaining.
St. Louis Rams. So, yeah.
Did you like what Zimmer did at the end when he refused to shake? What do you think of that?
I understand.
Do you like to see? What I'm saying is, like, do you want to see more of that or less of that in the NFL? Do you
don't-
like kind of that?
Well, that was the greatest thing, the Harbaugh-Schwartz handshake chase down thing. That was great a few years ago.
Because I loved it.
Entertaining.
I guess. I don't like coaches making themselves the focal point, and making the story about them. And I think Zimmer did that a little bit after the game, especially when, I mean, he flat out said, you know, it was on purpose. It was a dirty hit. They were trying to knock him out. You don't know what's going through a person's head. You can't say that.
Very quickly for Ben, because I know how much you love Peyton Manning. How did you feel yesterday about the fact that he was 3 yards away from breaking the record? Did it break your heart?
It's not Peyton Manning anymore. I mean, that arm is just so weak now. I mean, you see those out passes, and they take so long to get there. That if he wasn't as good as he was, I mean, he would be. I mean, he'd be intercepted 10 times a game if he didn't have the field awareness that he does. So give him some credit for even managing with the lack of arm strength that he's got. But, yeah, that's why the Denver Broncos will not be winning the Super Bowl this year.
Can we agree that, and this is for Luke Smith, our EP or producer, that Brady is 37 and he's showing no signs of wearing down, that he's obviously using something?
Yeah. He's playing.
He's using the power of Giselle. Stay young.
This is if it's not the best season of his entire career, it's the second best season of his entire career.
It's amazing. He's amazing.
And he is. And he's yet to have, I mean, Peyton Manning's weak arm comes as a result of those neck injuries and all of that. Tom Brady's never had neck injuries, neck surgery, back injuries. He had a knee problem, but that was it. So he's not losing the arm strength. He's actually a lot more like Brett Favre right now than Peyton Manning. He's just a little less careless with the ball.
So he's kind of an alien.
All right, we got to wrap this up because I think they're kicking off in like 5 minutes. We've gone on so long with 3 questions. Ferris, thank you very much. Good to see you, as always, and knocking over the scoreboard as well.
It's just because he's not on it.
Some tweets here. Jose on the poll says, we're not quitters. Tank, though, still wins 60 to 40%. So,
Yes, go Tank.
Go Tank,
Team
going
Tank.
for the top draft pick. Faux Phillip Rivers tweeted, Chris Wadd will execute as many key blocks on the IR as he did off the IR this season.
That is absolutely 100% true.
And that will do it for this edition of Bolts Brown Bag. By the way, just to be clear, we're not planning on a show next week during the bye. We thought everyone needs a little bit of break. Even
Right,
during
go
the bye.
out
So
for
do we.
lunch next Monday.
Go ahead, take your lunch, unless the Chargers decide to do something crazy and fire the head coach, and we've got stuff to talk about.
I will wear a party hat.
And then we'll come and we'll talk about it, and we'll tweet out, and we'll let you know that we'll be here. But otherwise, we'll see you in a couple of weeks after the Chargers host the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to retire LT's number on the Sunday. It's not a night game anymore. It's a day game. But we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new edition of Bolts Brown Bag, only here on 10news.com.